years ago, the library to me is the hub of life, right? I just love libraries because they have to always have knowledge, be on top of technology and trends, right? And just be a resource to the community, whether it's the local community, the K through 12 community, the higher education community. So a couple of years back, I noticed globally that libraries were going through a lot of change, right? They had to reinvent themselves over and over and over again because of just life changes, right? New technologies come in, new curation models. And so we created with my colleagues, this is when at Cisco, is a visioning session, very much like the one I just described with executives, but for librarians, right? Librarians with faculty and students and technology pulled people into a room to do very, very much the same thing. The difference is that, I think that if you need to reinvent your library, you come to this crossroad, which seems to always happen every few years, you could probably do it yourself. So I wanted to make sure I left you with tools that if you wanted to create your own visioning session and you hadn't yet, that you could just model it after what we did. Have people done visioning sessions in their libraries or reinvented or done anything along these lines? You have. And how has it worked out for you and what did you do? Any just comments? Did you rebuild? Did you have new services? Go ahead.
We formed our strategic plan based on the visioning session. So, I don't know that there were groundbreaking new services out of it, but it was, what the basis of our strategic plan.
Okay, great. And then did you bring in a lot of stakeholders and was it a day session?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Excellent. All right, let me walk you through what we did and then some of the outcomes. This paper sort of synthesizes what we did that day, but I'll walk you through visually. So we pulled together librarians, and this is mostly in higher education. I will tell you that the request came from a lot of universities. Can we shut this off? Yeah. On how are we going to deal with libraries in a digital world. We also brought in technologists because we felt that in order to really do a visioning session, and if you were thinking of changing your services or your building or anything, you're going to need some technology people in there as well, as in addition to stakeholders. And the stakeholders the majority of the cases were faculty and students, right? So those are your invitees. Who are you going to bring into the room together? We had priorities. Why are we getting together? Major, right, you organize them and rank them. Number one is a lot of them had budgets to redo their buildings, but they didn't really know what to do. Number two is there was a proliferation of services and they didn't know which ones to use. What was right, what would make sense for students, faculty, community. Number three is what is the role of librarian? Because there's so much demand, not just about search anymore or just, books. It was like, how do I use my cell phone? Or how do I set up an e-learning course? Or, how do I do a lot of other things? So maybe the role itself is changing. So we said, let's contain it to a couple of objectives. Okay, then we said, what are the challenges? Again, everyone sent in their challenges. And then we just prioritized and said, okay, let's just look at what are the key things that we have to focus on in our sessions. One, books are being replaced with electronic documents. Students wanted technology at the library, in the classroom, everywhere in their lives. A lot of confusion about the faculty on just how to use technology, even though the demand was there. Online learning is increasing, right? How do we incorporate that into the materials from the library? What is that? Labs were changing, just spaces. Could the library become a new lab space? Research was crossing lines, right? Researchers like to go to libraries and they want to be 24/7 and they need to have resources available, collaborative teaching, right? So we prioritized those, and then we said, okay, let's make our goals. Let's get some knowledge together first, right? Before we sit in a room, let's do what you would call a lit search. We called it trends, right? Trends, signals. Let's bring in photographs, right? Visually. Do we have samples from all over the world that we can sort of look at in advance, right, to give us ideas? And then can we, as a group, I'm not sure what's clicking here, come up with objectives, maybe a building design, services and offerings, a technology plan, and a people plan. Outline a budget, and then measure our success, right? So how do we know if what we're doing is actually working? So how are we going to ask the community? How are we going to ask the faculty? How are we going to ask the students? So the background work, the lit search, environmental scanning. We actually assigned that out, and we had a person who was the keeper, and I'll show you the samples. So we asked people, librarians of course, to go and figure out, right, all the literature that we should read in advance before we get together. And the keeper sort of organized, right? So we had reports coming in about scholarship. We had people showing about examples of libraries at campuses, examples of libraries in communities, thought pieces on regional community libraries. What are they doing different? Right? But the person who curated all of this information, we had K through 12 examples, community, higher education, took this out, made pretty much a digital pack, and then sent it out to the group to read in advance. That one person was responsible for collecting feedback and doing a short slide presentation. So when you get into the room, their job was to synthesize all the feedback from people on trends. The second was the visual. A second person was in charge of, let me just set it off, asking people to go out and photograph things. Photograph and send in interesting library samples, building samples, services samples. Right? One person said libraries should have gaming centers. Another said they should have mailboxes. Another one said they should be 24/7 key access. Oh, they need to have pool tables. What about food? Right? What about working out? Right? And what about music? Right? You know, all the things that you could possibly think that a library could be. Right? Just let your mind go wild. That's a 24 key access. So basically, that person's role was to collect gaming center, collect the photos, laundry. After all, people want to stay over, right? Why not a dorm kind of concept? Why not bedrooms? Why not Starbucks, right? You know, why not wine? Why not socializing, right? Right, you got to remember, this is a time when libraries were only quiet, right? And, you know, how are we going to evolve? We got pictures of furniture. You know, so there was, you know, endless possibilities of what it could be. That person's job was to curate all of the photos, classrooms. Why can't we have classrooms in the library and rent them out, right? For business meetings or for professors or for local community, fireplaces. And they would create a slideshow, pretty much like this, with the top ideas, right? So we did that. All of this has to be done. Remember, everything is timed when you do a visioning session, right? So you have all this prep work, and then you come in. You do your trends. So you have your visual presentation of the lit search. You have a visual presentation of the possibilities. And then you break out into work groups, right? And you talk about it and say, okay, what are some ideas that we come up with? Then the group comes back together, creates priorities, planning, timeline, metrics, and measurements. But we did something a little different. We also, let me just go into the vision. I think it's important at the end of the day to make sure that you're all aligned on having a key vision. Because why are you there today? What is our mission and goal? Is it that we want to have a role for the librarian, which the role was were a chief knowledge officer. That's what our group decided, that the librarian's role had actually evolved from a curator of information to being a chief knowledge officer for faculty, for students, for community. They also felt that the chief information officer, or your IT, needed to also be a partner, because libraries are no more just about flat books. They have so much technology that they needed a partner. And then you need your stakeholders, whether it's your community, your faculty, or students. And it's central to the community and central to the campus. And space has to change. The premise on space was that it needed to be more flexible, because we knew that change would continue to happen, accessible, and always technology relevant. The different thing that I did is usually in a visioning session, I don't know, did you have in your visioning session somebody who like drew cartoons or documented? A note taker, right? Okay, so in the consulting world, they do cartoons, right? And by the end of the day, you're surrounded with all of these ideas. And then somebody rolls them up and takes them home. And we said, and then we never see them again, right? Unless you go around and you take photos, right? So I said, why don't we just bring in an architect student, right? Somebody for free who is visual, age 22, good age, nice project assignment, we got permission. And I said, instead of doing cartoons, draw. Just start drawing. And at the end of the day, give us a visual. Right? What are we talking about? What does this library of the future really look like? Because we don't really know. And he did a great job. And he inserted some of his own, so I'll show you. Number one, he said, well, basically from listening to all of you, and particularly the community, is they don't like the front door. They don't really want to have a square building anymore. And they don't want to come in the front door. They want to make sure they can come in the side door, the back door, right? If it's the weather is bad, the parking, whatever. So you really what you're talking about is round. Now you know that's expensive, right? But just we're visioning, right? So they said what you're really talking about is a round building, right? So that it embraces the community, multiple entrances. And he said actually clear. Because books was quite interesting is you still want them there. At the end of the day, I'm hearing that you love your books, but books are almost becoming like artwork. So the book should be visible through glass on the outside and on the inside, because people still want to touch them. Even though they're looking at them on computers, they still want to see those real books. He said it came out to be 3 interior levels and 1 exterior level, a rooftop. So that's sort of the concept design. Very interesting. It was very consumer oriented. The one thing that we got from the community, the students, the faculty, is they wanted accessibility. They didn't want the librarian hiding in the back. They wanted that librarian out and about and mobile. Right? Mobile devices and part of the mix as an advisor. They also wanted to be able to get books from the artwork, and so they came up with an automated book retrieval system, which was conceptually, I'll show you. Exterior elevators so that you can see your environment, and a lot of technology. So that was the basic concept. And that's sort of the glass, right? The look, the feel. The Starbucks, a lot of discussion about comfortable, seeing people, being able to collaborate with somebody in the hallway, modern and fresh. And then the floors. Floor 1, and this is, if it's easier, it's in here, was what they called the social floor. So if people came in, they really didn't want to stop and return a book or deal with circulation. What they really wanted to do was have a concierge, right? Why would you have a help desk over there, registration over there, circulation over there, and reference over there? Why wouldn't you have a whole concierge in the center, one-stop shop, so that we could get all of our services? And why can't we have classrooms and meeting spaces, both more social, right, where we can get together with people, because a lot of people like to study. A lot of businesses wanted to use it for their industry classes and training, and why can't they be flexible? So the first floor was very social, and they wanted retail, and they wanted food carts, right, so that people could eat. They wouldn't have to leave and try to find a Starbucks, but everything was situated on the first floor. Also a visualization resource center, because a lot of people like seeing multimedia, right? Can we go in and project our multimedia in a room somewhere? Maybe we could have group sessions around it. We had walkways, right? Different areas access 24/7. So that's visually, right? There was a gaming section, a visualization theater, book kiosks. So that's where you went up and you pushed a button and the book would get extracted, sort of like Las Vegas. Someone brought in that picture of that restaurant in Las Vegas where the angels go up and grab your wine off the racks. So they said something like that for books. Interactive special collections. Mobile librarians, they like the Madonna headsets, people walking around being able to help you like you do in a restaurant today. Multi-purpose spaces, and lots of video walls. Why do I have to go in a room to watch a video or look at my laptop? Why can't a group of us go and just project, right, an image on a video wall, right? Why can't we collaborate? Because the world is very collaborative right now. And then we got into like, well, what would these rooms look like for businesses or the community or for a classroom? And they said, well, flexible, right? So these tables should be easy to fold up, fold down, make use, chairs, mobile, comfortable, so that we can do anything that we want to do when we walk into a room. And very technology, so lots of plugs, or hopefully at some point we'll just have very long-lasting batteries. Wireless. Book kiosks. The student who drew this was very adamant. You would think he wouldn't care about books, but he felt that as artwork, we had to make sure we had these automatic book kiosks so that you could go up, slide a card in, right, and your book would come down the chute. And then on the other side, you could return a book and it would go back into its place. Floor 2. Floor 2 was the quiet floor. So in the quiet floor, you still had zones. They said, you know, because people do like to go to libraries, and not everybody wants to collaborate in the library. People do still want to have quiet areas. It might be to listen to audio, and whether using headsets or just in a sound space. They want to have a quiet zone where they can just read, right, work on their laptops. But they wanted to have a restaurant too. It was interesting. They wanted to have a restaurant where you could kind of plug in. Now they have a lot of that in the airports, so you could plug in your laptops and work and do video conferencing. So they had the restaurant up on the second floor. And that's the visual. Multi-purpose spaces, lounge areas, visualization center, media download bar. That's where you go in and download your iTunes or any of your information. And then a restaurant with kiosks. And these are just closer look of the restaurant media bar and what that would look like. They had media racks everywhere. They didn't feel that magazines would go away. They wanted to make sure that you had newspapers and magazines fully accessible for people in case they just didn't want to read only a digital book or digital newspaper. And then the lounge spaces. This is the students' interpretation. It's a very large space at the end. We calculate this must have been enormous. But libraries should be enormous. Flexible seating, automatic, rotating media. And then floor 3. And floor 3 was even more interesting because it became what they called the lifestyle floor. The concept is why should libraries, since learning happens all the time and people need information all the time, why on earth would you close the library ever? Why wouldn't it be 24/7? And with the technology today and security and key codes, Well, maybe you can. Maybe you can have a 24/7 library, which opens up all different kinds of challenges and opportunities. The third floor is going to have to be somewhat residential, or it's going to be accessible for people who are working and might have kids, right? So what do we put on the third floor? Well, we put a hotel, we put a juice bar, well, we put a child center, we put a little grocery store like a Whole Foods, right? So now we have a whole dining center up there. But it's also an area where you have gym and a health club, but of course the researchers are collecting the data, right, and using it as part of their research. Because as some researchers say, my goodness, your best hours are in the middle of the night. Why wouldn't you let me come in and continue my work in the middle of the night? Oh, and we had some clothes in case you forgot, Gap or something like that, where you could buy stuff, and of course the laundromat, right? Remember the photo of the laundromat? So if someone said, yeah, we really need a laundromat, and be able to be in our little boutique third floor. And that's sort of how they market the bank, the dry cleaner cafe, the hotel area, the gym, the spa, and flexibility everywhere. And they had work lofts, so that you could actually work and eat and do your whole business in this kind of A-loft. Now Hyatt has the A-loft kind of concept. And that's the lobby of the hotel, which comes straight up from the concierge, because you know the concierge has to know everything. And the lofts. The close-up on the gym, the spa, the child care, and everything is integrated so that when you went to the cafe, researchers could measure your workout, measure your calories, right, and do research reports on that. And then, of course, you had the rooftop, because my goodness, the community will certainly want to have indoor-outdoor parties, but the researchers will want to do environmental studies. And so we have to have different kinds of environment studies going on in botany, what have you, solar panels, of course, and then the cover could slide on or slide off so that you could, in inclement weather. Covered meeting spaces, campus views, social spaces, entertainment. It's kind of interesting down in Santa Monica. I was there last week, and there was a startup building that conceptually looked a lot like this. It was amazing how years ago how this really evolved. So anyway, that is the visioning session. So what I did was just document the process that we did, right? Some of the visuals, and you're welcome to use this. I think what was really interesting was being able to get the information organized in advance, to have the stakeholders participate, and to add in, instead of the note taker, to have someone actually draw what you're thinking. Because at the end of the day, when he showed us the visuals, it was nothing like we actually thought we were talking about. Because in each of our heads, we had those photos. But when you bring in a young person's perspective, which is somewhat artistic, it's amazing what collectively you come up with.